18. They lay naked in the moksha, holding each other. For a long time Johannes was unable to speak. Even the simplest line of inquiry span off into awe and confusion. He looked for something familiar to hold on to, a saying, a memory, an axiom. Nothing. Horror. From every side suddenly, quiet, all-pervasive horror. There wouldn't be certainty in the world ever again. He whispered, "Is this how it is for you, never knowing anything for sure?" Ursula nodded. "I can't ever go back, can I?" Ursula shook her head. 19. Ursula and Johannes established a routine of meeting late after sundown when all the village lights were out, Ursula coming to him as a native woman now. Usually they made love, sometimes wildly, sometimes nicely. Afterwards, lying in the moksha together, Ursula would produce books and papers for Johannes to take home in secret to his yurt. Ancient, forgotten names: Galen, Lucretius, Bentham, Pankhurst. Other times she would ask pointed questions about native life. Do you know how old your village is? How do you think devas made the world? Do you know what science is? Johannes would answer to the best of his ability. Sometimes he would ask questions too. How old is my village? How did devas make the world? What is science? But Ursula would only kiss him on the cheek or say, "Well, aren't you a curious one?" and watch him concernedly when she thought he wasn't looking. With all her coyness and knowledge gaps about native culture, she didn't seem quite so divine to him now. More a woman playing at what a child might think a god. 20. Johannes was working in the moksha fields when a muddle of farmers passed by carrying bags of fertilizer. It occurred to Johannes one might build a wheeled cart and move the fertilizer that way instead. It would take 2 farmers only minutes to do the work of 20. He suggested this to the passing farmers. They exchanged a glance and continued on. The next morning a messenger came to the village and reported that a case of luda, or brain disease, had struck a village only 4 miles away. Johannes listened to the messenger tell of the horrors of luda, of the village folk there forever trying to draw water from waterless wells, or lying on the ground and waiting for death. Johannes called out, "Do they trade with other villages, these folk with luda?" "Why?" the messenger said. "Because maybe they caught the disease from somewhere else. Maybe it spreads from person to person." "Why should a disease do that?" the messenger asked. "How else would it spread?" Johannes replied. The village folk turned about to stare at Johannes. Staring particularly intently was Chief Eno. 21. Lying naked on their cliff one night, the ancient and dead city glittering in the distance, Johannes said, "Do you know everything?" "No," Ursula said. "Are you all-powerful, like the edicts say?" "No." "Well, do you live forever then?" "We don't have to die for a long time, if that's what you mean." He stared at the city and imagined it full of natives, men and women planting crops and kneading bread and not living in fear of rageful deer. He said, "Some of the villages nearby are very sick." Ursula nodded. "Why don't the devas do something about it?" She looked Johannes over as though debating whether to inform a child how children are made. She said, "Do you have ants in your village?" "Of course." "How many ants do you think we killed on our way out here tonight?" 10, 100, I don't know," Ursula said. You know, you could never kill an ant again if you stopped leaving your yurt. Johannes shrugged. Ants aren't clever, and it doesn't bother me so much. Then you're not such a kind god yourself, huh? Johannes dressed and began walking back to his village. Oh, come on! Ursula called after. 22. 5 days and no sign of Ursula. Johannes missed her and told himself he didn't. The mornings betrayed him, though. Waking up alone and finding Ursula's cinnamon scent still on his sheets. 6 days and nothing. He saw Ursula's face in the village women's faces. 7 days and he didn't want to eat. He waited until sundown and returned to their meeting cliff. Sat on the cliff already was a bear in a blue robe looking out over the water, Madeline on her lap. "Where were you?" Johannes said, trying not to shout. Ursula patted the blanket. "Sit down, venerable one." Johannes remained standing. She said, "I was rude, and you're right to be angry. I did all this, the moksha, the questions. I see the difference in you already. You never tell me a damn thing." I know, I'm sorry. What would you like to know?" "Who are you? Who are the devas?" From her robe, Ursula brought a small metal device of cogs and legs, a mechanical spider. It clambered around under its own power, then disappeared into the air. It reappeared a few feet away, scuttled about, and disappeared again. Ursula said, "We give these to our children, to teach them." "To teach them what?" "See if you can catch it." Johannes reached for the metal spider. Each time he almost had it in his grasp, it walked into the air and appeared again some distance away. Finally, it came to rest on the edge of the cliff, taunting them with a little dance. Ursula put her hand through the air, and her hand disappeared as the spider had, then reappeared about the spider and retrieved it. She said, "There are more dimensions to move about in than the 3 you're familiar with." "Heaven?" Johannes said. She shook her head. "It's not good, not evil, just another point of reference. And as you've recently discovered, new points of reference bring new problems to refer to. It is a world at a right angle to this one called Vex." She put her paw across his eyes. When she removed the paw, she was native Ursula again, tangle-haired and human. She said, "I want you to imagine an insect." "An ant," Johannes said. "No, let's not go there again. An insect, a beetle maybe, on a branch. And imagine if it set off walking around the outside of the branch in a circle and ended up right back where it had started. Think of how confused it would be to find itself returning there." After some consideration, Johannes said, "Because it thinks it's walking in a straight line." Ursula nodded. "Well, it is walking in a straight line, only it doesn't understand 3-dimensional space. Now, you're much better looking than an insect, but the understanding gap between yourself and someone living in Vex isn't so different. I'm sorry that sounds mean, but it's the truth. You live in samsara, the old world, 3 dimensions of space, 1 of duration. But the heavenly plane, Vex," she said, "there's no heaven about it. Vex, then, do you live in it all the time?" "Yes, and so do you." Johannes scoffed. "I think I'd know if that was true." "Well, many beetles can't fly, but it doesn't stop up and down from existing, does it? Your body lives in Vex, even if you don't know it. That's what moksha's for, lets you think a little beyond up and down." "Then show me Vex," Johannes said. She shook her head. "Please." She kissed him on the mouth and said, "Not today." Johannes played glumly with some grass blades. "Please don't do the sad face," she said. "I'm an ant. Ants don't get sad." Several minutes of his sulking silence, and Ursula said, "Oh, hell!" She directed a few hand gestures at Madeline, and the spile shot out above them and exploded into a tangle of dashes and symbols, blazing glyphs hanging in the air accompanied by little, intricate illustrations. Ursula said, "I can't show you where devas live, but I'll tell you where we come from. You must keep all of this a secret, though, you understand? Even from your other bear lovers." Johannes nodded eagerly. They rolled into each other. Ursula said, "Are you lying comfortably, Venerable One?" Johannes nodded. "Then we'll begin." She cleared her throat, squinted at the glyphs, and began to read. "So it was, long ago, that the myriad of man had spread to many thousands of worlds within samsara." 23. So it was, long ago, that the myriad of man had spread to many thousands of worlds within samsara. Lord Perun was the king of the myriad of man. He lived in a beautiful forest world with an opulent palace of glass towers in the city of Serdika. Lord Perun and his wife wanted for nothing but a child, and soon enough they had one. They called the child Anaximander, after an ancient wise man. Anaximander was doted on by servants and tutored by the wisest scholars in the myriad of man. It is said that when Anaximander first learned to speak, that he and his father played a game in the forest of Serdika. "What is this for?" Anaximander asked, pointing to a tree. "It grows tall and bears fruit," Lord Perun said. "What is this for?" Anaximander asked, pointing to the sky. "It brings the day and keeps the air in," Lord Perun said. "What is this for?" Anaximander asked, pointing to himself. "To that there is no answer," Lord Perun said. Much to his father's quiet horror, Anaximander continued down strange lines of questioning. Soon Anaximander's tutors were approaching Lord Perun, telling of how the boy had found contradictions in the general theoretics of the world, and asking what was to be done about it. Lord Perun instructed that the tutors continue to teach the boy the standard texts and not indulge his fancies. Another few weeks and the tutors came to Lord Perun again, telling of how the boy had mastered the general theoretics of the world and was now demanding to know why the theoretics worked. Lord Perun attended his son's chambers. They made talk of small things at first, then Lord Perun questioned the boy as to why he was giving his tutors such a difficult time. Anaximander explained that he was grateful for the tutelage, and believed he understood the finer points of the general theoretics. Everything was fields and interactions, all was rational. "But what," Anaximander asked, "constructed the world in its current configuration, and not some other? Why this much matter in the universe, and why matter that works in this way? The glove is beautiful, but from whence came the hand?" Lord Perun flew into a rage at his son. "You have been loved," he shouted. "You have enjoyed every extravagance and foodstuff in line with your heart's whims. You have received the finest education ever provided in the myriad of man, and yet, even with the world explained, even with the great eyes revealed, you seek more, something beyond the perfect affirmative. It is an empty dream. You are searching for an explanation beyond explanation, an impossible meta-yes." Anaximander said, "That is a fine way of putting it." Lord Perun dismantled many objects in Anaximander's room, and his yelling carried to each of the 11 forests and 5 library domes of the palace. Anaximander asked his father if there was a tutor in the palace who might instruct him not in the description of things, but the meaning of them. Lord Perun replied that there wasn't a tutor in the galaxy who could do that. And so it was, when his father was gone, that Anaximander removed his rings and braids and robes. He washed the perfume from his skin and the spices from his hair. He snuck into the palace kitchens and emptied a blue sack of potatoes, draping the sack about himself for warmth. Then silently he left the palace and went off into the villages of Serdica, into ignorance, in search of the meta-yes. 24. A week later, and several of the old folk in Johannes's village fell sick. The sickness began with confusion, then repetitious behavior, unlocking a door, locking it again, over and over. Luda disease had arrived. Farming was put on hold, and Chief Inu ordered most folk to stay in their yurts and tend to their children or work on their stitching. Returning from the village store one evening, Johannes noticed Georgi, the village scribe, on his knees. He was attempting to tie a shoelace, but could not complete the loop. Johannes greeted Georgi. Georgi only looked up with vacant eyes and went back to the fruitless shoelace exercise. The next stage of the disease would be death. Johannes said, "Georgi, I don't think you're very well, and I would like to show you something while I still can." Georgi nodded with blank eyes. Johannes fetched 2 breather masks from the equipment hut. He took Georgi's arm and walked him through the abandoned valley to the moksha fields south. He applied the breather mask to his own face, then the other to Georgi's, and led him out into the moksha. Georgi's eyes flitted from Johannes to the ground, then to a broken place in his own mind. Johannes said, "The moksha won't kill you, Georgi. That's all a myth, I promise." He removed the mask from Georgi's face. At once Georgi's eyes bulged and he coughed mightily and pulled at his nose. His face was streaming with tears and his cheeks were flushing a mighty red. He cried out, and when it became unbearable to watch, Johannes went to put the mask back on Georgi's face. Georgi pushed the mask away and ceased coughing suddenly. His eyes were steady. He fell to his knees and examined the dirt with wide, shining eyes. He plunged his fingers into the dirt and burst out laughing. He looked up to the stars. "Oh," he said. "Georgi," Johannes whispered. Georgi examined his withered old hands. He began to cry. "I have," he whispered. "What do you have?" Johannes whispered back. "I have been." 25. Over the next fortnight, Johannes took 3 more village folk into the moksha fields, a shoemaker, a beer maker, and a grieving widow. They did not all cry like Georgi had, but as Johannes led them back out of the field, he could see that their eyes were slow and wide. He made them swear not to mention the ritual to anyone, and they swore. Then he took more folk out into the moksha. Subtle changes began to creep into the village. The washing lines acquired pulleys so that they might be reeled in. A map was drawn segregating the farmlands so farmers could work more efficiently. The beer tasted nicer in general. Johannes kept no special contact with those he had initiated, but they passed one another occasionally in the street and exchanged a knowing glance. Meanwhile, everything was wonderful to Johannes, or worthy of wonder now. The world, himself, and the golden bridge between. He walked about in a permanent feigned stupor, awake and pretending he wasn't. Urinating one morning, he became transfixed with an intricate pattern on the plaster of the toilet and mangled the tip of his penis in his trouser zip. Such is the path to enlightenment. 26. Falling asleep beside Ursula, Johannes mentioned in passing that he had been taking village folk into the moksha. Ursula bolted awake immediately. She asked him many questions, most of them pertaining to, are the folk behaving differently? Johannes could not deny they were. He reported that the shoemaker had begun making laces from twine rather than catgut, that the beer maker had assembled a team of busy children to test how best to store the hops, and that the grieving widow smiled occasionally at the lunch gatherings now. Ursula put her hands over her eyes. She said, "You don't know what you've done. They're better for breathing the moksha. I am too. Johannes, don't you want them feeling how I feel now? There are new things in my head. I didn't even know I had a head." Ursula said nothing. Johannes knew responsibility then. Another new discovery. 27. Outside the palace no one recognized Anaximander as the son of Lord Perun, with his blue sack and bare feet. He loafed about the streets and the markets and spoke with all those he came across. "Aren't the general theoretics sublime?" he would say. "The world is built of fields and interactions. Time can bend, space can warp. What do you think made the world so?" The street folk gave a few grumbles of approval and continued in their work. Clearly, this approach was fruitless. In search of inquiring minds like his, Anaximander left the boundaries of Serdica and entered the great forest. He wandered alone, surviving on fruit and berries and streams. After several days, he encountered a madman who spoke of a group of theoreticians in the strawberry lands to the east, who sought what Anaximander desired, the cause of causes. Anaximander walked for many hours as instructed, full of excitement, cutting his way through jub figs and palms. At last he located the group the madman had spoken of. They were old men and women with long hair and slow gazes. Anaximander said, "Great gurus of logic, I seek the cause of causes. I seek the meta-yes." "You have come to the right place," an old man said. "Sit down and learn these number tables." Anaximander stayed with the group many months, memorizing their formulas and equations. He learned to calculate curves and impossible dimensions. He learned to break infinites down until they resembled comprehensible numbers. He learned to compute the world. One day, an old wise woman declared Anaximander's tuition was complete. She explained that with these new theoretical games there was nothing in the universe that could not be accounted for by number and measure. "I thank you for your tutelage," Anaximander said, "but I am still no closer to explaining why the theoretics work the way they do." "We never promised you knowledge of that kind," the old woman replied. "You said you would teach me the cause of causes," Anaximander said. The old woman pointed to the number tables and equations. She said, "There is no knowledge beyond description." Anaximander said, "If I told you of a man who hunts through the refuse and rubbish every day, selecting only matter he can eat, or breaks into homes raiding pantries, you would be no closer to understanding his motives until I mentioned the meaning of his quest. He is hungry. All the descriptions of his eye color and his height do nothing to explain that." The wise woman said, "The universe is not a man." "No," Anaximander said, "I believe its wants are stranger yet." He thanked the old woman and the group for their instruction. He set off again into the forest. 28. Anaximander spent many weeks alone again in the forest, trying to make sense of what he and the world were made of. He was withered from eating little and walking much, and he raised his withered hands to his eyes. Under the appearance of his hands, under their color and shape, a mystery lived inside, one that appeared without need of supervision, automated and self-perpetuating. Where had this order originated? What was it to be anything? Finally, he reached a colossal mountain and began to climb. He came upon many vineyards during his climb, large facilities producing wine. Several winemen recognized him as the son of Lord Perun and offered him endless drink. He could find no reason to refuse. He spent several months drunk, growing yet thinner, hungover each morning, intoxicated each evening, no closer to solving the mystery of eyes. What was there beyond theoretics? If number and measure couldn't tease out the meaning of the world, there was no hope in other approaches, surely. Stumbling across the mountains one afternoon, he spied a party moving through the pass below. He descended to greet them. They sported musical instruments and began a merry song for Anaximander, improvising as they went. They sang of Anaximander's thin arms and thin legs. They sang of Anaximander's long hair and inquisitive eyes. When they were finished, Anaximander bowed to them and thanked them for their song, though he admitted he did not deserve it. The leader of the troop told Anaximander that all things in the universe deserved celebration, and Anaximander was no exception. "Why should all things deserve celebration?" Anaximander asked. The leader of the troop replied that the universe was a mystery in plain sight, and it was right to sing its praises at all hours of the day. Also, since Anaximander and the musicians were made of the universe, really the universe was praising itself, and wasn't that marvelous? Anaximander knew he had found kindred spirits. They were the very opposite of the dulled theoreticians. Number tables be damned. The musicians invited him to join their joyful ranks. He accepted without hesitation. Anaximander and the troop travelled from village to village singing for the folk they found there, rich and poor. Though who was poor in the myriad of man, really? They extolled the virtues of trees, they extolled the virtues of mud. They praised everything from fire to thunder to photons, and no one sang louder than Anaximander himself. Glad was he that he had chanced upon a group of men and women with outlooks so close to his regarding fundamental matters. After many months, the travellers reached the ancient city of Plovdiv. They toured about the markets and squares, singing their ballads of world and nature, and many came to listen with wide eyes and open ears. Drunk on the music and drunk on ale also, Anaximander sang particularly loudly. To the old tune he took up his own new lyrics now. And praise to the world, and praise to the trees, and praise to the doctor, and praise to disease. But what underneath them? What of that land? Though the glove is divine, from whence came the hand? The troupe stopped playing. The audience stared. "What about the hand?" someone asked. Anaximander said, "The world is beautiful, certainly. I have extolled its virtues for many months beside this band of merry folk. But what gave the world its beauty? What deemed that it be this beauty and not some other? What deemed that it be this structure and not some other, or even that it exists at all?" The troupe and the audience stared with blank faces. Someone said, "What does it matter how the bread was made if it's delicious?" Anaximander said, "Wouldn't you like to know where the flour came from, though?" "No," came the reply. Anaximander took off the majestic robes the troupe had provided him, and thanked the troupe for their hospitality. He was once again a beggar, bare, his destiny barer yet. He continued on. 29. Free to walk the grounds of Lord Mriga's palace, Ursula did so. She visited the scriptural libraries and relic cabinets, the perfume groves and liberation caves. She visited the fractal halls where Oshos practiced insight meditation, robed and bejeweled elephants levitating around a black fire. Finally, she came upon the consumables quarter, a partitioned quadrant of the palace secreted behind drapes and plain wooden doors. Within were bubbling moksha pots where native-picked moksha was boiled and concentrated into the dried sticks used as incense. Behind the pots was a door guarded by initiates. Silently Ursula walked into Vex, cutting straight past the initiates in four-dimensional space, and re-emerged into Samsara. She found herself in a kitchen. Many chefs were preparing meat on chopping boards, then throwing the meat into bins, from which initiates delivered the meat into some kind of huge, whirring machine that billowed moksha clouds. Ursula passed through Vex again, further into the operation, stepping out to what appeared a refuse chamber of many storage shelves and an incinerator machine. Countless mundane objects were assorted on shelves, clothes and bracelets and garlands. She examined a pair of trousers to find they were two-legged, meant for a native, small too, intended for a native child, she realized. All of the clothes were child-sized, in fact. Several of them sported the zigzag tartan of Hisaria, Johannes's village. In a corner were several metal vats, locked. She chose a vat at random and pushed her nose through Vex to smell what was inside. She recognized the scent immediately. "Madame," came a voice from behind. Ursula summoned every drop of will in her high mind not to yelp, "Lord Mriga!" "Were you curious about the more everyday proceedings of the palace? You need only to have asked for a tour." "I must be lost. My apologies. I wonder, my lord, these are native children's clothes, yes? Would it be an imposition to ask why?" Mriga mouthed the incinerator on, and it spat twisting blue flames. He fetched a pair of dungarees and threw them into the incinerator. He said, contemplatively, "It is a curious thing that for all our capacity to manipulate nature, there are still certain commodities we must produce in the old, laborious fashion. Gold from the ground, books from the trees, and so on. Some things remain forever primitive." Ursula peered into Vex just a moment and saw that the walls beside and behind her were made of new metal, impenetrable to travel in 4 dimensions. Mriga continued, "I often think it's a shame that we have dispensed with many old protocols and traditions in the vain name of progress. Though some endure not because we have failed to transcend them, but because they are perfect as they are." He threw heaps of clothes into the incinerator now, coats and hats and little garlands. He said, "Do you know, on this very same world, millennia ago, when natives held dominion, there was a delicacy." He turned on her. "Bear. So cultured were the natives that they let a bear have its fill of berries in the mountains, and when it was full and fat, they would kill the bear with a projectile weapon." Mriga began to salivate and licked the falling saliva from his mouth with a black tongue. "And the flesh within was blue, infused, bursting with berry juice, and when the flesh was pulled from the bone, it dripped sugar. I dare imagine it tasted delicious, no?" Ursula nodded, keeping her high mind on the sound of her breath. "We are not so primitive as to eat bears these days. But we have cattle, and for many years the cattle and their calves pitter-patter about in the moksha as they work, getting their little feet and hands all spiced with moksha, infused, bursting with it. And, madam, when the cattle are slaughtered and the flesh is pulled from the bone, it drips concentrated wisdom." "Cattle, my lord?" "Cattle." Just above a whisper, Ursula said, "I'm sure you're aware that the execution of natives is prohibited under the Native Welfare Act." Black eyes, empty and unblinking, Mriga said, "Not only do you come to this world as a fear-mongerer, but a do-gooder too. Venerable scholar, never forget that the fight against tyranny soon becomes a kind of tyranny of its own." Doing her best to keep her voice steady, she said, "I should like to know why you are executing natives." Mriga hummed to himself. "Ultimate transcendence is the ultimate good. Ergo, all things are permitted in the attempt to attain it. But then, you already know the answer to your question, madame. Ursula nodded to the vats. You're trying to make jhana moksha. Mriga raised an ironic eyebrow. But such a thing has never existed, you claim. Such a thing can never exist, no? She eyed the pipes and vents, the elaborate mechanisms of filtration. Her stomach attempted to empty its contents. Watching her revulsion, Mriga said, I do not pass judgment on Gerhardt's culture, primitive as it is. Do not pass judgment on mine. Native flesh transmuted into jhana moksha, oh gods, it's... Her high mind took control again. I am tired. I am ever so tired. I might retire, my lord. As you like. She passed him with held breath, searching her memory for a teaching or mantra that applied to this thing, finding none. Mriga purred. Oh, I should add, the native population was bulging a little. A short-lived brain pestilence has been introduced to keep their numbers down this season. I'd recommend avoiding the native lands for the foreseeable future. He turned about to catch her with a black ruby eye. Though, having no interest in natives, I can't imagine why that would concern you. I'll keep it in mind, my lord. The little trousers and coats all burned, Mriga began work on the little shoes. 30. Her Holiness Theodora was asleep in her chamber. She rested in native form, as most devas preferred to when alone. Her hair plaited, her skin tattooed with fractal mandalas. She woke to a distant whisper calling her name. It appeared to be coming from the water carafe at her bedside. She peered into the carafe, and there, on the water's surface, was a shimmering facsimile of Ursula. Madame, the image of Ursula said, I must ask you to not speak too loudly. We are both probably under surveillance. What in Anaximander's name is going on? I'm talking to you via projection machine, though I don't think the signal will remain stable too much longer. Gerhardt's scientific miracles abound. Theodora's skin began to ripple as she took up her ceremonial owl form, but Ursula said, Please, madame, there's little time. Let's not stand on ceremony. In solidarity, Ursula took up her own native form, of black tangled hair and freckles. They were both but two humans then. Theodora said, As you wish. Now, what is this about, venerable scholar? I've made several distasteful discoveries in the temple, madame. For one thing, I can confirm Mriga and his congregation are executing natives, and children at that. You've seen evidence? I have. Theodora checked the chamber door was locked and returned to the carafe. Is there more to it? Among the equipment preparing the native flesh, I also found a number of purification devices and vessels of jhana moksha. You insisted that the substance was a myth, no? Ursula remained coyly silent for a moment, rubbed an ear. I can confirm it is not a myth. Judging by the scent, Mriga has still not perfected the recipe, but it is most definitely close. That is to say, you have created it successfully already, then, at Gerhardt University? We have, though only out of curiosity. None know the working recipe save for myself and Lord Lepus. Lord Mriga was correct that this constitutes treason. Ursula said, "That I cannot deny. We will get into it later. For now, what do you suppose Lord Mriga wishes to do with this substance, if perfected? I believe he has designs on subverting the Golden Council." "That is quite a claim. If I am wrong, I will gladly take responsibility. If I am right, though, we are both in considerable danger. Is your door guarded?" "It is." "With your own entourage?" "Yes. Will you kindly tell me what is going on?" Ursula collected herself. "Madam, you asked for a summary of my work on the Bivnik effect. The mathematician Lord Lepus and I have been arguing for the moderation of travel in Vex for centuries now. Stoyanium-32, the base material of moksha, must be mined from stars. Of that I am aware. We are seeing unprecedented numbers of Stoyanium-32 mining stations being constructed throughout the galaxy. We are also seeing an unprecedented number of stars rapidly decaying as a result. The miners only move on to the next viable star, and the process continues. It is a ghastly thing, but such are the times. Your predecessor, Lord Simeon, a close associate of Lord Mriga's, barred us from attending Golden Council meetings to report our warnings, accusing us of doomsaying. With his death and your appointment to the head of the Golden Council, I saw an opportunity to raise the alarm once again. I've been a reader of your poetry for centuries. Much of it seemed to hint at a reverence of nature. I rather hoped that might mean you'd act in a more conscientious capacity than Lord Simeon when you became High Priestess." Theodora said into the carafe, "I might be the poet, but it seems you're the charmer." "Yes, venerable scholar, when your research was covertly spoken of by senators and the like, it somewhat piqued my interest, hence my visit." "I thank you for that. What does any of this have to do with Janamoksha, though?" Ursula said, "Stoyanium-32 is only the first stage in the moksha production process. Next, it must be cultivated agriculturally on farming worlds. Few devas are willing to do the work, and so most plantations use natives. However, given the passing of the Native Welfare Act some time ago, it has become rather unfashionable to openly keep natives in such bondage, and so there are only a handful of moksha plantations left in the Devon Union. They are on outpost worlds so as not to elicit guilt. Mriga's power stems from exactly this, the scarcity of plantations. The Golden Council wouldn't dare contradict him, else he may well withhold his moksha supply from the galaxy." "This is an alarming prospect, to say the least," Theodora murmured. "I agree, my lady. Nonetheless, we have been trying to quietly counter this power imbalance at Gearhart University. Some time ago, Lord Lepus and I began development of a technological alternative to Vex that doesn't use Stoyanium-32. We hoped it would remove the need for star mining and native moksha farming." "I am to assume you were successful?" "Partly. We've made progress with opening Vex windows for communication, such a device I am using to talk with you now." "May I ask why you have kept also this a secret from the Council?" Ursula shook her head. "Please, madame, we can discuss the particulars later, and I will apologize in full. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep the window open." "Very well, please go on then." "For as long as I've known Lord Mriga, he has favored the more transcendent myths surrounding Anaximander's life, and his ascension to Nibbana. Many, such as myself, believe the Golden One to have been a wise man, that he simply let go of craving. It is Lord Mriga's assertion, however, that Anaximander found a holy plane beyond our own, a realm above Vex. I have watched the debate play out for 2 millennia now. Is Nibbana a state of mind, or a genuine, attainable place of power? Clearly Lord Mriga is of the second camp. I suspect he is developing Jnana Moksha in an attempt to utilize that over-realm. If he is successful, the Golden Council will be powerless against him. Theodora made a tutting sound with her beak. But, venerable scholar, you claim you have developed this Jnana Moksha substance already. Did you not at least experiment with it? Only once. It was a traumatic experience, more disorienting even than the first time one steps into Vex. I can confirm there is a spatial realm above the sacred fourth, but it is not one Lord Lepus and I believe can be mentally tolerated. Nonetheless, it is clear Lord Mriga is at least attempting to gain entry to that realm himself. Do you believe he will be successful? Honestly, I do not know, but I can guarantee this. With your succession to the head of the council, things have been accelerated. Not only are you more open-minded than your predecessor, but Mriga no doubt suspects you are at least willing to consider the Bivnik hypothesis. This is a direct threat to his power, and I suspect he will shortly begin withholding moksha from nearby worlds, possibly even readying for a breakaway from the Devon Union. He believes our race is entitled to every world in the galaxy, and that the secret of our endurance is in absolute expansion. Such a philosophy might be admirable were we not living in a galaxy of limited resources. Theodora muttered, "And if all you have said is true, what do you suppose will be his next move?" This is as much as I know. He is executing natives, using their corpses to develop dangerous technologies, and potentially readying to subvert the Golden Council. Theodora nibbled a fingernail, an act of nervousness Ursula felt she was privileged somehow to witness. Theodora said, "Madam, how useful it would be now if, in all your years of secret invention, you and Lord Lepus happened to concoct a machine that might foretell the future." "We cannot claim that miracle, my lady." "Quickly, then, if what you say is true, how do we proceed?" "I beg that you leave for your temple on Phoebe as soon as you can and relay what I've told you to the Golden Council. Please draw their attention to the murder of natives. And I beg, as a secondary matter, kindly raise the issue of the Bivnik effect. Soon enough the Devon Union's growth will increase to the point that, even with council intervention, the expansion cannot be contained. Our fate will be sealed then. Mriga is a temporary distraction. I promise you that Bivnik will be the real catastrophe." Theodora nodded. "I swear I shall try to honor all these requests. And what will you do?" "I'll make my return to Gearhart as soon as possible." "Do you suspect Mriga intends to take you captive here?" "Without a doubt. I'm currently the greatest threat to his power. It's entirely possible I was lured here to be neutralized. In any case, it's imperative that Bivnik is taken seriously by the council elders. From the bottom of my heart, I ask that you make this happen on my behalf." Theodora nibbled the nail again and thought, "That will not do. You must put your case to the council directly, first with testimony of what you've seen here, then with as much proof of your Bivnik effect as you have. I am not a scientist. Your testimony is essential." My lady, Lord Lepus and I have travelled to the council chambers on Phoebe many times, never to gain entrance. We were branded pariahs centuries ago, as I have said. On this occasion you have my backing, Zoe. Tomorrow I'll announce my entourage is to depart on account of an unforeseen diplomatic emergency. You will join us and accompany me back to Phoebe. I will admit you into the council chambers myself. No one would dare bear a visitor with the High Priestess's blessing, however pernicious Mriga's influence. You will have the speaking floor for as long as you require it, days if necessary. The slaughter of natives was outlawed over a millennium ago. It shan't be tolerated under my watch. The threat of societal collapse is quite another thing, and you'll make your case for that too. Ursula bowed. That is most kind, my lady, though, with deep respect, there are still things holding me here temporarily. Theodora raised an eyebrow. Rumors abound that you have a native lover. That's your business, but this current thing takes priority. Come back for this acquaintance of yours in time. I cannot make a compelling case before the council without your presence. For now, we must tend to our house. My lady. 31. In Hisaria, the village folk began stringing bunting between the central yurts for the coming Children's Day celebrations. 3 more children were to receive the honor of a sentence to devahood: Slavyanka, Mitko, and Sophia. Johannes watched the preparations picking up, all chatter and glee. Especially gleeful were the 3 chosen children, paraded as they were about the village from home to say goodbye and wish everyone well. Ursula had not come for several days, and so Johannes went wandering to the oak tree, to the cliff, into the moksha fields even. Still no bear. Finally, in desperation, he ran to the lake where they had first met not a month ago. Out of the water peered a shimmering and pale face from behind tangles of black hair. "Venerable one, you look so sad," the image of Ursula said, rather sadly herself. "Won't you come here?" Johannes said. Ursula shook her head. "Just a kiss, then." "I can't." Johannes knelt. Ursula's reflection put a hand to the surface of the lake, and Johannes did the same. He found no reciprocal touch, only water. Ursula said, "Things are a little dangerous at the temple. My village is safe. You could come and live in my village, with me." She tried to smile. "That is very kind of you, and were things different, I would take you up on it right away." He went to protest, but she said, "Just wait a moment. There is something important I have to tell you, and you must promise not to make a public fuss. It will put you in terrible danger." He listened without interrupting. When she was finished, Johannes stared with wide eyes and murmured, "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "What do I do?" "I really don't know." "Can you help? You must be able to help," he said. "Not safely, no. Chances are I'm being watched by Mriga at all hours. His guards will only follow me if I flee." I told you, come and stay in Hisaria." "Things have gotten complicated, and my people need me. Darling, I have to leave tonight with the High Priestess." "Leave for where?" She pointed past him to the sky. "Stay," he said. "Please." She only smiled softly and shook her head. He wanted to be sick, he wanted to forget, he wanted to go to the moksha fields and burn every last damn flower so his mind was small again. He shouted, "You made me this thing, this new thing. I look and see now, I hear and listen now. I'm sad in ways I never imagined. I can't sit still, I can't think straight. Some days I can't believe I'm alive, and other days I don't want to be alive anymore. And you tell me what they're doing to children and expect me to just settle the thing myself? Don't leave me like this. You can't leave me like this." "Please," Ursula said, "please don't do anything that will put you in danger." "When will I see you again?" "You've become so very, very clever and you don't even know it. You'll use that cleverness for good, I know you will. You'll find a way to fix all this." "Damn it," he shouted. "I want to see you. I want to hold you." Then that part of his mind the moksha had touched whispered to him, and he repeated the whisper. "You're not coming back, are you?" She said, "Watch for golden comets and violet fire shooting into the sky tonight. That is how I'll leave. I'll be looking down on you. Look up at me." Her reflection moved close to the water's surface. She said, "I shan't ever forget those nights in the fields or those nights on our cliff. I shan't ever forget my very clever native." Johannes's tears spoiled the flatness of the water. "I don't care," he said, "and I would ask that you never forget me either. I don't care, Johannes." He kicked the water. He picked up every rock he could find, hurled it into the water. He threw in sticks and branches and dirt, and when the ripples settled, the water was clear, and Ursula was gone.